Americans. How true are American high school movies compared to real-life high school? Most high school students don't arrive to school early enough to tailgate in the parking lot. Most are also not in their mid-20s and driving BMWs and Range Rovers, etc. Cliques are less well-defined. Yes, there are friend groups, but each one does not fit into a stereotype that cleanly. And members hang out and intermingle with other members. According to some teachers I've heard from, cliques were more exclusive back then, like in the 80s. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure kids are more blended than they used to be. I went to school in the 80s, class of 85. We intermingled, but it was not often you saw a stoner hanging out with a goat roper / cowboy, and the drama kids did not hang out with the jocks, but most of the group intermingled. My high school was 3,000 kids and one of 3 high schools in town. We were the poor kids' school. I went to high school, obviously, and teach at a high school, all in the United States. I went to a suburban school in California and teach at a small town school also in California. Here are my observations. Things foreigners often think are fake that are real. Sports are connected to school. There are people who wear uniforms on game days. There are rallies. And there are school rivalries. They aren't usually as serious as depicted on shows. But they are real. Cheerleaders do exist. They wear uniforms on game days as well, not every day. Yellow school buses exist. Where I teach, they bring students in who live in the country. Kids who live in town walk, drive, or get dropped off. Red and other color plastic cups also exist. As a side note, some kids really do have cars at that age. Most probably can at least drive. Student government, or student body president, is often a real thing. But it has little power. Basically just a student committee to rubber stamp whatever the administration is going to do anyway. Things foreigners often think are common that are fake or exaggerated. Being a cheerleader or an athlete are not nearly as exclusive as depicted. Nor do they automatically equate to popularity. Cliques are far more fluid than depicted. Rarely do they automatically center around one activity, like football or band or chess club. It's not at all uncommon for people to do a lot of different activities that blend stereotypes, like a football player who is a chess club officer and in student government. Bullying is rarely anything like it's depicted. It's rarely done in front of everyone with bystanders not caring. It's more common to be done in secret. And to focus on emotional rather than physical bullying, although physical bullying does happen. I think movies and shows are trying to capture what it feels like, that no one is there to help you, and missing what it actually looks like in reality. Everything is way more boring and less dramatic than depicted. Fiction requires conflict, and so TV shows and movies create it even where it probably wouldn't actually happen. A weird thing is how they seemingly show it as if kids just have time to talk and chat in the middle of the day in the hallway by their lockers, when in reality you're booking it across the building because you have 5 minutes to go from the first floor. Get to your locker on the second floor. And then run all the way across the third floor to your third period class. Also to know about y'all, but I got only 25 minutes for lunch in HS. So nobody was milling about during lunch either in the halls. You forgot the part where a teacher would catch you running to your next class and make you turn around and walk from the end of the hallway, making you late for the third time, which meant you had to spend the first half of class at the principal's office. Speaking just for my school. Not even close. Bullying is never as obvious as it is in movies. Nobody dumps their tray on anyone or purposefully trips the new kid. Actually, most people are pretty friendly. Most of the teachers and the principal are well liked. There aren't well-defined cliques, nerdy group, jocks, cheerleaders, etc. But there are large friend groups that intertwine and overlap, and there is definitely drama. They do get active shooter drills and the amount of Drew Gus /smoking/vaping right. Though, Also, crazy. Entitled parents. Edit. We don't go to school at 10 a.m. The sun is almost never up until after we arrive. And yes, we do get 2 to 3 hours of homework most days. I remember one time in school. I was walking down the hall with my books in my arms. A random bully ran down the hall and slapped them down. Hard. Sending all my stuff flying everywhere. In a movie, everyone would point and laugh. In movies, that sort of obvious bullying of a nerd would be treated as funny and normal. In reality, the other kids gasped. And a few random kids stopped and helped me gather up my things. I remember one girl saying, "That was so mean." I thought some parts of Superbad were relatable. Specifically the one scene where Michael Cera was locked in the room at the party with all the older guys. For me at least. The fact that Superbad spent a whole movie trying to obtain alcohol is totally realistic. We absolutely had whole evening adventures trying to get booze. The Hawaii driver's license was definitely a thing in the mid-1990s. California IDs had holograms earlier and couldn't be faked anymore. Several people at school had fake Hawaii IDs back then. I'm sure one of the writers must be my age from CA. I watched this movie with an ex-South American, and he was confused because they all just bought booze from the tiendas when they were like 13. Most people aren't that attractive. Most people aren't in their 20s. Most people don't discuss sex as much as Porky's, American Pie, etc. Everything but that last one at my high school. Friend groups are more porous than they make. For instance, there were football players that also acted in school plays, or wrestlers also in the math club. The bullying is less dramatic. Nobody is actually getting locked in a locker. We did actually use those red cups at parties that you always see in movies. My non-American friends were always shocked when I told them that. No family eats breakfast together before school/work. They don't in the movies either. Dad grabs coffee and runs out saying, "I'm late." And the son picks up one pancake from the foot-high stack his mother made, crams it in his mouth and runs for the bus. The daughter says, "I'm not hungry," as she walks out the door, leaving the mother staring at the toddler in the high chair, who then tips a bowl of cereal on the floor, and the mother looks despondent. I enjoy that they have time in the mornings to just chill at the house. Also, it's daylight when they wake up. OMG, the daylight thing heals me in commercials too. Like NyQuil ads. Dude wakes up smiling the next day. Bright AF outside. I guess on the medication he was able to sleep until at least 8 a.m. and not be worried about losing his job. I have a pretty standard start time, between 7:45 and 9 o'clock depending on the day. And only in high summer is it light when I have to get up. And even then it's more like dawn than bright light. Freaks and geeks is probably the closest representation. Everyone looks remarkably young in high school. Everyone in high school movies or TV shows are aged up. Everyone is either stick thin or chubby. No one is in any kind of shape. Most people don't do their hair or put on makeup and even go to school in sweats. Everyone is way more dressed down, like they rolled out of bed. I came here to say this. So often, the incredible awkwardness of teenagers is overlooked. Freaks and Geeks is wonderful in its depiction of teenagers and the awkward drama of high school. Bullying isn't nearly as comedic, it's more getting screamed at and shoved. But in the end, teachers and the principal just say, "We'll just avoid them." The only American high school movie I've ever seen that actually resembled my high school experience was Dazed and Confused. The only real difference is that the movie is set in the 70s and I went to high school in the 90s. With the corresponding differences in fashion. technology and stuff like that. Everything else having to do with how the kids behaved and how different characters had different social groups, and some overlapped, and some didn't, instead of having these rigid cliques you tend to see in movies. And pretty much everybody got along for the most part with everybody else, even if they were in different grades and different social groups, or even already graduated like Wooderson. And all that was pretty spot on. In southern CA, a lot of the hallways are actually outdoors, so the schools and shows and movies don't look like real schools here at all. Went to high school in far northern CA and same. It wasn't one big building. It was a bunch of different buildings notably separated. There wasn't hallways. There was outside. Also, at least at my high school, most of the others in my area had them, didn't have lockers. You bring it to school, you either carry it with you or leave it in your care if you're one of the lucky few who their parents let them have or borrow a car in high school. I was lucky. My pops let me borrow his truck on Thursdays, and I always felt like a badass driving in his pickup. The most realistic high school representation I have seen is the TV show My So-Called Life. The John Hughes, rich kid, poor kid cliches were not accurate. I went to high school in Newport Beach, California, a very wealthy neighborhood. And some of the most popular kids were not wealthy. In fact, several of the most popular kids were from single-parent working-class homes. The smart kids were actually pretty popular. I never saw bullying anywhere near as bad as the movies. But other people on Reddit tell me they saw it, so how common that is in American high school. It depends. Jock slams nerd into lockers and demands money. Isn't how it normally is. Usually the bullying is verbal. If it is physical, it's either done somewhere hidden in the school or off of school property. Real high school students are 13 to 18. Some of the younger ones haven't finished puberty yet. The younger boys might not have started. Most students aren't old enough to drive in most states. People aren't interested in crisply defined clique stereotypes but are sloshing around figuring out who they are. In most places, schools and classrooms are crowded. Nobody hangs out by the lockers, there's no time. You go to your locker when you get to school, before your 25-minute lunch, and at the end of the day. Teachers don't get deeply involved in students' lives for the most part, they don't have time either. And most importantly, like most movies, everything is glamorized to be more interesting: the fights, the dramas, the live triangles, all of it. Oh, there's plenty of drama in HS. But most of it is incredibly boring if you're not directly involved. We had 2:30 in between class periods. We did not have time to lean against the lockers and talk. Sometimes it rains. Sometimes it snows. Sometimes the wind blows. We had to go to school then too. In the winter it was very cold. In the summer it was unbearably hot. I bet they fixed that because the expensive electronics would cook themselves. A school didn't need anything like that when they built the building. Usually there was some construction crew outside banging and hammering on something. There was no restaurant that we all hung out in. We did mob a pizza place a few times after the dances. They got mad because their employees were too busy. They didn't make enough money off of us, and because the old people buying expensive food couldn't get through us. We caused numerous major traffic jams because we kept crossing the street. The cops showed up to direct traffic. The pizza place complained. The police went to the school and they told our parents that we had to stop. They kept the rec center open later for us instead. They actually did put on a really good after party for the middle school dances after that. They just herded us all into there and told us we need to go home if we left, or we'd get into trouble.